Hey, my friend, I'd like to welcome you to the webinar today. My name is Michael B. Ross, and I'm the principal and founder of HBK's High Performance Division. At High Performance, we have a team of leadership and culture consultants, and our focus is really to come alongside of our clients and help them solve the leadership and culture challenges that they face in their organization. I mean, we all know this, that leadership is the most important business skill, hands down. The organizations that focus on improving their leadership, of raising their leadership level, of preparing their next generation leaders for the challenges that they're going to face in the marketplace, those organizations, they grow and they thrive. Organizations, however, that do not look to improve their leadership, that are not intentional about how they're building their cultures, unfortunately, those organizations at best are mediocre, but most crumble and fall. And so my team and I are dedicated to help our clients resolve their leadership and culture challenges. Some of it has to do with simply training people in becoming the best leaders they can possibly become. Some of it's just giving them new ideas that they can follow through with, which I hope you'll hear on the webinar today. Some of it's us coaching and walking alongside of them as they go through some changes that they need to make in their organization. Before I became a leadership and culture consultant, I did own a few businesses. I had a business in a franchise network where I was able to grow my organization to over 100 people. And so I know firsthand the leadership and culture challenges that most of you face. I also owned a dealership in another industry and helped to grow that organization to number one in its market. And so I do know the pains that it takes also to grow an organization. And I know that none of us are perfect. I know that I've made more mistakes in my life than I've had successes. I'm like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, for his basketball career, he shot 46%. I'm kind of somewhere in there. I've just made enough shots to be good enough to grow and to thrive and to learn what it takes to think, behave, and communicate like a leader. And today, what I really want to focus on today was change. At the beginning of every year, we all reflect on the year before, and we think about the things that went well. We think about the things that didn't go so well. We think about what we'd do differently if we had the chance, and we remember the great experiences that we had. But then at the end of that reflection time, we look forward. We say, okay, now I've got another year in front of me. What is it that I want to accomplish in this new year, in this new season of life? And that's the beauty of turning the page from one year to the next, is we get kind of this fresh start. And during that fresh start, people make a lot of commitments, they make vows, they set plans in place, and then they're ready to move forward in change. And that's what it requires. If we want to tell a new story in 2023 than we did in 2022, then we've got to be ready to make change. But change is hard. We all know that. Change is very difficult. We as human beings, we live 95% of our lives in habit. So changing habit means I've got to think differently. I've also got to feel differently, because when I think something different, then my body has a different chemical reaction, and I've got to fight against the changes in my body. And then in my experience, sometimes when we make changes, it affects our relationships. Sometimes when we make changes, we run into unforeseen resistances. Sometimes when we make changes, the change isn't exactly what we thought we wanted before when we envisioned it. And so all of those things have to be considered when we're making change. Now, the good news is my focus in postgraduate school, when I was preparing to write a thesis, I had a question in mind, and that is, how do we properly affect change in our lives and our organization? How does change actually work? And so I've dove into this topic more than any other topic in leadership and culture, is I've dove into this whole idea of change because there's something that fascinates me about a person being one way one year and completely transforming into something else. And so this topic I've dove into, and I want to tell you there are 7 elements to change that you've got to consider. If you're going to make some change or you want to make some change in your organization, you got to remember these 7 elements, and they'll help as a guide to direct you as you're going through the pains of change, to keep you focused, keep you steady, keep you on target. And so the 7 elements of change are this. Number 1 is resolve. The word resolve. Think about the word resolution. New Year's resolution. Well, what does that mean? It means that I am putting a stake in the ground and I am saying today I am resolved to change, that I am going to make a change this year. So in your organization, maybe you have some culture challenges. Maybe you have some growth challenges. Maybe there's some relational difficulty. And you started this year by saying, I am making a resolution. I am resolved to change. Now, depending on how strong that resolve is going to determine whether or not you're going to follow through with the change. And one way to increase your resolve in anything that you're doing, let's say personally you want to lose some weight. Let's say personally you want to get out of debt. Let's say personally you have a new car you want to buy, you have a vacation you want to go on, you have other experiences you want to have in 2023, and you've put your stake in the ground. You said, I'm resolved to do it this year. The one way you can ensure that you build some mortar around the brick of resolve is you find out what your purpose is behind wanting to make that change. So if you're looking at increasing resolve, what's the purpose of the change you want to make? So if you want to affect cultural change in your organization, why? What's the purpose behind it? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of growing your organization? So you want to get bigger, you want to service more clients. Well, why? Why? Be very clear about the purpose behind it. You want to lose some weight. It's great, but why? And it can't be just for something external. I want to lose weight so I look better. Well, look better for other people. How about feel better for yourself? How about something internal that no one outside of you can take away? Make sure that your purpose behind your resolve is very, very clear to you. So resolve is key. Now, this is the other fact. When it comes to change and change behavior, if someone does not have resolve, if they do not want to change, then I want to tell you this, they will not change. So I want to tell you business owner, operator, entrepreneurs, you leaders out there who are maybe struggling with a person that you want them to get better, you want them to want to change, you want them to improve, you want them to contribute at a higher level, and you're considering whether or not they're going to be with you long term. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you a fact. If they do not want to change, if they do not have resolve, they will not change. Resolve is the key element. The key. Without it, nothing else happens. None of the other elements are activated. Without resolve, someone will not change. So it doesn't matter. You can motivate, you can inspire, you can uplift, you can give tools, you can incentivize. But if someone does not want to change, they will not change. So make sure that in your resolve, you are not trying to convince a bunch of people around you to go with you who do not want to. Now, we can talk about organizational change, maybe in a consultation. If you're wanting to make a broader organizational changes, how do you make it to where, how do you communicate that in a way that will give you the best resolve throughout the organization? That's something we can talk about another time. But just remember that the first element to all change is resolve. And if you want to change and you know the purpose behind it, and you remind yourself of your resolve and you remind yourself of the purpose behind it each day, then the chances of you carrying through and actually executing the change goes up exponentially. So number 1 is resolve. Number 2 is rigor. Rigor is, it's going to be hard. And it's settling in your heart and your mind that it's going to be hard. That I am willing, because of my resolve and my purpose, to put in the work. the rigor. Because anytime you make a change, remember, you're going against habit of thought, habit of feeling. You're going against your patterns in order to do something different. You're picking a new destination and you're going that way and it's uncomfortable. And so you lean in and you say, I'm going to walk through the rigor that it takes to make the change. And whenever you make change in an organization, you have to communicate again and again and again the changes that need to be made. It takes 9 to 14 impressions to make a lasting impression. And so when you're trying to impact change in an organization, you've got to communicate over and over and over again. And that's hard. That is rigorous. It is challenging. So if a change seems too easy to you, then the chances are the changes are not sticking, because change requires rigor, because it's re-embedding new things into your subconscious. It's changing the way that you think. It's changing the way you feel. It's changing the way that you communicate. So it is hard. It is rigorous. So 1 is resolve. Number 2 is rigor. Number 3 is relevance. Relevance. So you have to make sure that you keep relevance of the change, especially on broad base, to your organization. If you're making an organizational change, make sure that everybody in the organization knows the relevance for them. What does this change mean for me? What does this change mean for my day-to-day activities, my day-to-day tasks? How will this affect me? How is it going to benefit me? How is it going to be rigorous for me? I have to know how it's relevant. I also have to know what's expected of me. And we'll talk more about that later. But relevance is, I have to know what this means for me. And poor organizations or failed change projects come down to a lack of clear communication most of the time on relevance. Because if you think about it like this, if you're trying to make a change in the organization and ultimately you see it benefiting everybody, but you do not communicate that, but yet you're asking people to buy into the change, the chances of them buying into that change goes down exponentially. But if you will communicate the relevance for them and how you believe it's going to affect their life and why it matters to us and what's required of them and all of the above, then the chances of people actually employing the change goes up and the buy-in goes way up. So make sure that you provide relevance. And also, if there's an individual change you want to make, remember the relevance for you. Remember the context. Remember the purpose. Remember the resolve that you have, but also create relevance for yourself in saying, I want to lose weight. And so in relevance, that is why when I am at this restaurant, I am going to look at these items on the menu, and I'm not going to look at these items on the menu. I'm not even going to look at these items on the menu. So I have to create relevance for myself when it comes to whatever context the change I want to make. Number 4 is relationships. Make sure when you're making change, you also develop relationships around change, because having other people in your corner who are supporting you while you make change is a chance for you to borrow people's courage at times and have them speak into your life for encouragement, so that when things get hard, not only are you forging a deeper relationship with somebody else, but they're also at times giving you courage to move forward and helping to remind you of why you're making the change, the relevance for you, the rigor that you committed to. But relationships are key when it comes to making change, because we can't do anything on our own. I love that idea that we can just pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and do everything on our own. But we are social creatures. We rely on one another for so many things. And it's important that we're vulnerable with another human being in the change we want to make, and we ask somebody to walk the journey with us. When you're making organizational change, I think it is really, really important that you help focus the energy of the change around building stronger relationships, because you say, hey, making these changes are going to be tough. It's going to be tough on all of us. We need to move and migrate into this new destination and this new pathway forward. It's going to be hard, but let us choose to bond together and not separate. Let us use the change to unify and not to disunify. We have to focus our energy and organizational change on relationships and encourage people to lock arms and work together. That's a galvanizing thing to do when it comes to a change project. So, number 1, resolve. Number 2, rigor. Number 3, relevance. Number 4, relationships. And then number 5 and 6 go hand in glove. Number 5 is frequency. Frequency simply means that over a minimum of a 6-month period, you are going to make at least one update touch per week when it comes to the change you're trying to make. So the update could just be an encouragement around the change you're trying to make for yourself or for your organization. You're simply reminding yourself, hey, I'm going to review my goals for this year. I'm going to review the change I want to make. I'm going to remind myself of why I'm doing it. I'm going to remind myself of the rigor that I have to do. But you're making a touch. It could be an update. You know, sometimes it's good for you to have an update. I always say this to clients. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. So having an update of your progress on the critical path of change that you're making, update the entire organization. Let everybody know where you're at. Hey, we're making progress. Good job. Because sometimes in the midst of change, it's just like when we're working out, after the first month of working out and eating right, you look in the mirror and you don't see much of a difference. And then 2 months goes by and 3 months goes by and you may still not see much of a difference. But then you look at a picture of when you first started and you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, I'm not the same person. It's because when we measure based upon prior metrics of where we're going and we can see a timeline, there's something so exciting and galvanizing about that. But we have to be able to manage and measure the change and talk about it. So that's another way to touch. So frequency is once a week. You're going to have some sort of update, some sort of encouragement, some sort of discussion around the change. Get people's feedback. Hey, how do you think the change is going? If this is a change you're personally making, write out, journal. How do I feel during this process? But make a specific, intentional focus around that change that you're trying to make and make sure you communicate it to the rest of the organization. And then number 6 is longevity. For change to really stick, for there to be an embedding of new habits into your subconscious mind and body, you need at least 6 months. I know. Everybody says anything you do for 21 days becomes a habit. It's a lie. It's not actually true. That is a statement of willpower, that you do something for 21 days, and that's great. But it doesn't become a subconscious habit till around 6 months. Now, if you want something to really stick long term, once you hit about 2 years and a change, what happens is the mind no longer truly remembers what it was like prior to making the change 2 years ago. So you completely reform the way that your brain and body works, and it's hard to even recollect what life was like before the change. And so when you look at that in context, when it comes to change and you say, it's only 6 months, if we go after this change and we dedicate 6 months of time to really make sure that this is embedded in our subconscious and our habits, and I got to do one touch a week, and I've got to have strong resolve, and I've got to build relationships, and I've got to be rigorous as I do it, and I've got to create relevance and communication around it, it just doesn't seem that hard. But when it comes to making change, people are so scared to make change that they never move forward. Because there's all these what ifs that we play in our mind. Remember something, this is very important for you to remember. Your mind is not in control of you. Your mind is a tool. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, which is showing that there's a difference between the mind and the being. And so remember that your mind is a tool, but it is not you. Your mind is built for survival, and 80% of your thoughts are negative. And your mind is always going to try to protect you by using what if scenarios and reminding you of things that went wrong in your past and bring those to your streaming consciousness so you won't move forward. But if you look at the actual context of how change occurs and how you can truly change the way that your mind is patterned, the way that your body reacts, and the way that you experience life, you got to ask yourself, why wouldn't I do it? If there's a change that needs to be made or changes I need to make in order to have the life I want, why wouldn't I do it? And that leads to number 7, which to me is the most important part of change. And that's accountability. Now, accountability, I know, it gets a negative connotation because people oftentimes associate accountability with someone with a gavel walking over to you and pounding your hands on a desk or crashing their gavel on a desk every time you step out of line, and you're going to be accountable and you better stand up and give an account of where you're at. But to me, accountability is the most life-giving thing in the world. Accountability is calling us to greatness. Oftentimes that's what I do for my clients. I'm sitting down with clients usually once every 2 weeks in coaching sessions, and I have a whole team of people who coaches clients, and a lot of times we're talking about changes they want to make, and we're asking them, hey, did you follow through with these activities that are going to lead you to the change that you want to make? And they either say yes or no. And if they say no, it's, oh, well, good news is we still have time. Let's put it back on the activities. Listen, let's carry through with this. That's what accountability is. It isn't me shaming or guilting or judging somebody for not making the change. It's just a simple reminder of saying, listen, you said you wanted to be something better. You said you wanted to go to a whole nother level. And I'm here to hold you accountable to that. And now the organization as a whole, to me, in order for you to hold people accountable, there's a couple of things you got to have in place, okay? This is very, very important. When it comes to change, when it comes to growth, when it comes to a positive or life-giving culture, a way of life, you got to have 3 things in place. Biggest thing is you got to have expectations. You've got to have expectancy, which is even, to me, more important than having expectations. Is we also as a group have to live with expectancy that people here are going to be great. They're going to do it better. But expectations or standards are, hey, this is what we have to do in order to create this change that we want to make. This is what is required of all of us. And this is the expectation from here on out, is we're no longer going to live at this level. We're now going to live at this level. And we won't settle for this level anymore. We're going to only settle for this. Now, in the process of holding people accountable to that, remember that change takes time. And people are going to take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and then they'll take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. And it's a process. We want progress, not perfection. But number 1, you got to change the expectations. If you want to live at a quote unquote championship level, you have to have championship expectations. It only makes sense. But then you give people the leeway to make mistakes and to improve their progress, to get better each and every day. And so we don't want to use shame, guilt, and judgment to hold people accountable. We simply want to give people the chance. Now, if somebody just flat out doesn't have any resolve and they don't want to change, that's a different conversation altogether. And I'd recommend, if you have somebody like that, sign up for our 30-minute consultation at the end, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you about that. But then number 2, when it comes to holding people accountable, so you got to have new expectations. Second is measurement. Measurement. I talked about this earlier, but make sure that you're measuring the progress. If people can't perceive or see that they're making progress, the assumption is I'm not making any progress. But just like that, I talked about that picture that you have at the beginning when you start wanting to lose weight or get in shape, and then you look in the mirror and then you look at the picture, that's progress. We want to do the same thing when it comes to change, when it comes to growth. We want to show people how we're making progress. Measurements. Show people measurements, because you can't manage what you cannot measure. And then the last one is standardization. Standardization. So you got expectations, you got measurement, and then standardization. And what is that? That is us taking for accountability purposes, weaving the new behaviors, the new practice, the new change into our way of life. Now, that could be via HR, that could be through finance, that could be through sales and marketing, it could be in our operations. I don't know exactly where that would fit, but we standardize. We make this new way of life weaved into all of our communications and our systems. And for us individually, if we're making a change, those three things, you have an expectation, you have someone that's going to hold you accountable. I always recommend people get a coach, get a personal trainer, whatever you need to help you make the progress you need to make, then do it. But you need accountability or it will not stick. And then you measure and you standardize. That this is now going to weave in to all the ancillary factors that remind me of the change and will embed the change to where at some point someone will come in and they'll say, hey, it's pretty cool how you guys do things here. And, I talked to somebody a couple years ago and they said you did things differently. And you've got somebody that goes, yeah, I don't even remember what it was like back then. I think we did things a little bit different. But that's what happens when you follow through with change. So remember the 7 elements of change. These aren't just a fluid step-by-step process. They all weave in to the change process as you're going. So you've got resolve, you've got rigor, you've got relevance, relationships, frequency, longevity, and accountability. Now, I'd love to talk to you and your team, or just you individually, about the changes you want to make. Every year we should look to see what we can become. What can we change in our lives? It's a beautiful thing about human beings is we're not ducks. We don't have to stay the same. We can get better. We can improve. That is the beauty and simplicity of being a human is we can change. We can get better. We can improve. We can grow. We can thrive. We can do it as a people group. If we decide we want to change, we can change. We've proven it through 6,000 years of recorded history. So if there's a change you want to make and you're wondering where to start, or you're challenged with how do I make culture change? How do I make leadership change in my organization? I would ask you, sign up for the 30-minute consultation. We love to have conversations with clients and potential clients. I don't know if we are a good fit to work with you or to come alongside of you, but I certainly want to help you solve whatever leadership and culture challenge when it comes to change that you have immediately. And if we don't have a further relationship together, fine. That's fine with me. I would call us friends and move forward in this journey together. And if we decide we're a good fit for you, then we'll determine that as well at the end of the call. But I'd ask you to sign up for that 30 minutes. That is time for you to really flesh out a change you want to make, and we're always here to help you. So I wish you the best in 2023. I hope this is the best year of your life. And I hope that we have an opportunity to come alongside of you as you make the changes in your life and in your organization that will bring you the most fulfillment. I'm Michael B. Ross, and I want to invite you to be intentional, be exceptional, and lead.